Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Mikhelishvili. I'm CEO and co-founder of Amsterdam Pharma, an analytics and organizational change agency that's dedicated to raising new standards of healthcare quality. And that's based on the principle that whether or not you like sports or you're good at what you do or you're not, if you take a sports approach to it, chances are you'll set new records and raise new standards in whatever it is that you do. So I've spent 20 years in medical affairs across pharma and biotech, cultivating relationships with scientists to drive research, as well as building capabilities in learning and development, training, CRM optimization, and operations. Today, I'm very honored and excited to kick off the year by inviting my expert panelists and who are leaders in medical and various different angles of healthcare, leading medical affairs teams, operations, managing budget, resources, as well as strategic partnerships for software development companies. And let's meet our speakers today. Okay, so Liz Delgado, let's start with you.
All
Please
right.
introduce yourselves, everyone.
Sure, sure. So thank you, Tim, and thank you so much for inviting me to join today's panel. I'm really excited about what we're going to be discussing today. I'm Liz Delgado. I'm a medical affairs veteran, I guess you could call me, now that I've been in medical affairs for close to 25 years. I've worked in both global companies and some emerging biotech. As founder of Seek Medical Affairs, now I really work with companies, helping them really, execute and their medical strategies and operations. And I'm really looking forward to sharing my insights today with the rest of the panel and participants. So thank you again for inviting me.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. Luz Ramirez.
Hello, everyone, and nice to see familiar faces again. I'm really happy, and thank you, Tim, for inviting us again. So my name is Luz. I'm a medical affairs team player since 15 years ago. I've been working in different companies, mainly affairs operations, just developing teams to get to achieve companies' goals. And I'm really excited because this topic is something that I had to deal daily with. So this is something that I really like. Thank you once again.
Sure, great to have you back, Luz. Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, and good morning, everybody. It's really a privilege and a pleasure to be here. Similar to everybody else on this panel, I've been in medical affairs for also close to 25 years at a variety of companies. I would say, some concentrations in medical information, field medical, and definitely operations. So this is a topic that's very familiar, and I'm looking forward to discussing it with you.
Great. And Alex.
Hey, everybody. Great to meet everyone. Thanks, Tim, for the invitation. Thanks, team, for providing the insight into how we can push innovation forward in the medical affairs space. I'm Alex Pasek. I'm a physician by training, worked a couple years in the consulting space, and I've been mostly involved for the past 10 years in life science partnerships, working with the FNIH and within Ipsos Consulting, as well as with different software companies, including SAP. So very interested to see this solution in action.
Great, absolutely. So the topic today is very timely, given we're early into the year and we're all visualizing ourselves being successful, more successful than ever before, and certainly more than last year, hopefully. So the topic today is illuminating purpose of measuring performance to set new records. And we're going beyond analogies that most organizations use, the sports analogies at Amsterdam Pharma. And we're going to integrate those concepts into operations, daily operations of all business. And so we'll start by talking about some challenges. I'll ask our panelists to discuss some of those persistent problems of how we view various different platforms, as well as address them through improved visibility, line of sight, how everyone contributes to the success of our organizations. We'll share a practical solution that you can consider, the ANCORA Decision Assistant platform that we've launched at Amsterdam Pharma as well, and see how our panelists, based on their vast experience over many years leading teams, would apply some of those features that I'll talk about, as well as provide a lot of very valuable advice to all of you listening and tuning in and watching as we're live now on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. And so I invite you to share your questions and comments for our speakers as well. Okay, so there will be 3 different scenarios, as I mentioned, we'll discuss, and then talk about how we can raise those new standards, right? And how in a very competitive ecosystem, right, where the products, the mechanisms are becoming more complex than ever before, and the margin of error is lower than ever as well. And so we talked a lot about some of the root causes of inefficiency in our previous webinar, monthly webinar, in December, because we have many different ways to measure our performance with customers. But unfortunately, not everyone uses performance platforms, CRMs, right? The input is variable. And when we visualize our internal operations, our workflows and behaviors, which are just as predictive of company success, we usually resort to qualitative methods, right? We feel like we're spending more time in this one activity, and as a result, maybe that's what's causing some of the failures, for example, right? But it's episodic. We don't measure it continuously. And even though both our internal operations and external performance with customers drive the success, of companies, and then can predict performance as well. And a lot of those blind spots that we have lead to inaccurate forecasting, a lot of the mass layoffs and that we've seen. So the next generation of approaches to operations actually do not have that line between external performance and internal operations, and provide us with a more full real-time visibility of our workflows, how medical collaborates with clinical development and sales, for example, in order to drive more continuous quality improvement. So that's where we left off from the last monthly webinar. Remember, this is a monthly webinar series, and I want to pose the first question to get the discussion going here with the speakers. What are some of these persistent challenges that you've seen in getting your teams to be more clear about the purpose of why they need to measure performance using the platforms that they have available to them? What are some of these challenges that continue to persist, and what are some of your suggestions on how to address them? Liz, maybe we'll start with you.
Muted myself. So I would say one of the persistent challenges, and I think you kind of you spoke about it and you outlined it, is getting people to actually put in their actual outcomes. A lot of difficulty happens is that we don't really have a really good mechanism to do it, right? So the CRMs that we currently have, they're really great at being able to capture, right, their activities, our external engagements, but they're not really good at really showing kind of that connection between that activity and an actual outcome, or even how that activity, right, that external activity was supported by internal activities, right, and a bigger team behind the scenes. So what happens is that many times what you have is you got to have like a piecemealed approach right now of capturing, these types of outcomes. And not even all the functions within medical actually does this, right? So some functions, so you've got different spreadsheets from different functions in different formats in different ways, and you can't really It's really, really difficult to bring it together to get a really holistic approach. And so what happens is the teams themselves, right? Since we can't put it together and they can't see it, sometimes they don't even know what to put in, what is an outcome. And so I think the fact that we don't really have a very good process and a very good way of capturing this, and the inability of people to be able to see beyond what they're doing, and actually sometimes even seeing what somebody else puts in or whatever kind of spurs to them, like, oh, wow, that was an outcome and I haven't outlined it. I think that that's one of the persistent challenges that we've had, or at least that I've experienced. I open up to the rest of the panel from their perspectives.
Yeah. Luz?
Yeah. Yes. Seconding that, what Liz just mentioned, a lot of the teams have a lot of frustration because their impact of what they do is not visibly seen. It's everything is siloed. So sometimes in order to get real projects out there with big infrastructure, with different types of teams, it's very hard to do. And the why, when you ask why are we capturing all these things, it's not only because of your performance, it's also because we need to have decisions to a leadership team that we should actually tell them which people are doing what things are doing and the impact of what they're doing. So it's really important to have CRMs that not only make you visualize the actual performance of each and every person, but what is the actual impact of what are they actually doing in the field. So this is always a struggle, but I think in the future there are going to be new ways to handle all the data and integrate everything, so it can be, you have a more holistic approach of all the different teams that integrate into medical affairs strategies.
Yeah. And referring back to our last month's data that we shared with our audience, it seems like our leaders have spoken loud and clear that they want to measure the impact they have on clinical outcomes, but they're not able to do that currently based on how they define it. And so they acknowledge the fact that what we are measuring is different from what we want to measure as well. And so I talked a little bit about, the purpose, right? That's the topic of today, right? And the why, kind of making that clear for our teams on whose performance our company depends on. And, if we visualize, let's say, sports athletes, right? They usually always, speak about their records. They share their previous records and data and their competition with their competitors, with their teammates, right? So they're almost proud of their record books, right? And which is not the case in medical affairs and in pharma and biotech, unfortunately. And so that's the gap that we want to be able to address in 2025. And here is really the result of what, how you could improve your performance if you actually go beyond those analogies, right? And drive that certainty, that sports athletes have. And that is the transparency, right? Transparency of the results, the progress, where we have more data than ever before to evaluate our own performance. And if we can share it more continuously, right, where you have accountability for not only performance and results, but also sportsmanship, right, where gold medalists are stripped of their medals if they use steroids, right, performance enhancing substance. So it's not only competition, but it teaches you to play by the rules. Sports ranking and quantifying everything that you do, what types of practice, what kind of types of training did you engage in order to lead to that record, right? Personal record, for example. And how do you replicate that? You need that level of detail that sports athletes use to measure their impact, and that continuity of capture to make sure that the data that we enter into our CRMs or platforms have quality, have meaning. And also, I'll mention that our metrics are a moving target, right? The quality of the performance metrics that we use depends on the mechanism of their collection, right? Who are the players? Who are the judges? What are the tiebreakers? When do you collect them? And also, they change. Their value changes over the course of the product life cycle, where we know that medical education or scientific communications, for example, are instrumental based on recent data that we talked about last month. Those types of activities are critical in predicting adoption of a new product and raising brand awareness. Pre-launch, or post-launch, those metrics may change, for example. Okay, so the value proposition for the solution that we are now making available to our teams and leaders is that if you take that sports approach, mix in a little bit of science, data science, right? And you can respond to your sales stakeholders and leaders or others in the company, you can drive more outcomes. You can drive people on the teams to be more intentional about what they do, okay? To know that the why they need to capture their performance, which sports athletes don't have a problem with, right? And that can lead to more dynamic decisions, improved accuracy of forecasting, admin cost and time savings as well, right? And when you distribute that accountability, you're able to improve the performance across its entire spectrum of the customer experience as well as the employee experience. Because if we work well with our sales colleagues versus, let's say, clinical development, if we don't have a great relationship with our clinical development teams and we don't respond to their emails on time, chances are, as a company, we may not meet those goals, regardless of the attributes of our products. So I'll share with you some of the advantages of ANCORA. And really, here, I think everyone, regardless of whether or not they work in a revenue-generating function, wants to know their impact, how their daily contributions impact the organization. And that's what we're really illuminating here with the kind of holistic approach to performance, translating daily contributions into impact. And so what are some of the questions that this new solution addresses? And they're captured here. And what I'll do is, before we ask our expert panelists about how they would utilize some of these features and draw on their experiences as well, right? And what has worked for them, right, to drive their team's performance, I want to actually share again some of the highlights of these features and the questions that we're addressing. And the first of all, it starts with, what are all the different things that we do every day, right? And how likely are these activities to drive results? How do our team members collaborate? So let's start with that. I'm logged in now into the ANCORA application as a team member, a field medical affairs professional, okay? And so he would capture his activities very simply by looking at a list of all the different specific activities that someone in his role is expected to complete. And they would be listed here. They receive a reminder every day to make sure that the quality and the integrity of the data is important. And they look at this list and they simply indicate which of these activities they completed. It's as simple as that, without any drop downs, without any additional clicks needed. And you have every activity that is differentiated, that is weighed by impact. And that's determined in the beginning of the year or the quarter, for example, by the team lead. Okay. Notice that a lot of these activities are external, others are internally facing, because we've all known how certain activities really are very misrepresented, yet they're valuable, but no one knows about them, right? Training, you come up with a new design, new concept for a proof of principle study in medical affairs, which leads to national sales training. Right? That needs to be accounted for as well, and recognized as well. So that's how you actually input activities data now in this platform. Now, if we look at outcomes, right, viewing how the team collaborates, okay, what you see here is a list of all the various different outcomes as you define them in your company, okay, and if I were a member, right, as Philip Romano in this case, I want to see this new, latest, very global outcome, right, that affects the entire company, a new European business development partner announcement, right, which has been logged by their teammates. And so you can see here how different members of the team collaborated on this particular outcome with different activities and to various level of certainty that those activities led to those outcomes. So this is where we're applying data science, where we're tracing our outcomes to activities, okay, in real time. Okay, so if Philip in field medical affairs feels like he also contributed to this new European business development agreement as a result of different activities that he did, he can add an activity that's specific to him, and also rate the certainty factor, which the team lead will then approve, okay, or reject if that's appropriate. As he indicates what activity he contributed to that same outcome with, the program populates all the previous the dates that activity took place, and he can add that particular activity. Okay, it's as simple as that. Okay, now I'll log out here and I'll sign back in as a team lead to show how the view would change, for somebody who's responsible for this team. Okay, so what they see is they have an approval flow. Okay, so they are going to approve a particular outcome now from Philip Romano, and they're going to click and approve this outcome. Okay, and which is going to lead them to understand who collaborates and what is the real-time impact of those collaborations. All right, so that's really how we can have a more comprehensive and real-time, full visibility of everyone's workflow. Okay, another concept here I want to talk about is with which colleagues or customers do your team members interact most often, right? So you want to measure the information that's relevant, meaning if you have if you want to capture a particular activity, a survey, right? You want to survey the people that have worked with you, right? So your colleagues or your customers as well. And so what you can create a survey very quickly. Okay, so product safety insights, or we can call it a European, just to go on with the theme, a European patient registry works task force. This is an internal task force that's been built in order to study the endpoints that would be most appropriate. In this case, for example, okay? And so you're going to send this survey to your internal colleagues, and it lists those colleagues with whom you've had the most interactions. Okay, so you can check off those people with whom, those teammates of yours with whom you've worked over a particular date as well that you can specify in order to provide data that's relevant. Okay. Now, how do you ensure that the information is actually the quality and it's timely as well, right? So what you want to do in this case is to take advantage of the notifications. So now I'm logged in as a team lead again, and I would send a notification on completed activities today, right? What activities did you complete, right? Every day, for example, you choose the time. Today's Tuesday, for example, right? With which colleagues or customers did you interact to complete your activities? And what you would see is you would get an email, okay, and the email would point you to that particular part of the program, okay, which I'll show you in just a moment here. Okay, I'll just share a different screen. But ultimately, that's what ensures that you have quality data. So this is the email that you'd receive. You would click on it. Okay. And it would drive you to this screen here. Okay.
Hey, Tim, we're not seeing your screen anymore.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. There we go. Okay, so here's the screen that you would see. Okay, and one of the questions is, with which colleagues or customers did you interact? Okay, so you'd click on that screen, and you would be able to log the people that you collaborated with, your teammates. Okay, so here you have a list of all the teammates that you've collaborated with over the last 12 months, for example. Right? You could log those collaborations, and you would see the number of times that you worked with them. You'd simply add these collaborations, and that would update the log of your internal collaborators in the surveys that you would send. And as a result, Barbara Giordani could log in and see in her dashboard various different types of scores based on these surveys, medical interaction outcomes.
So, Tim, I'm going to interrupt just to let you know that the screen is frozen, so we're not seeing what you're doing exactly right now.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Here we go. Thank you. So the surveys that so the team lead would see would drive them to be able to see the products, the results of the surveys, such as medical interaction outcome scores. Okay, on various different campaigns. And notice that the types of surveys that you have are either behavior and performance related surveys, as well as that are general and specific surveys, such as the one I just showed, medical interaction outcome survey. Now, I'll go back to some of the other features and just kind of group the questions that we're able to respond to. We talked about the certainty, right? So here is a group of other questions that we're able to address. Right? Who is demonstrating the biggest impact? right? Which of the outcomes have that the largest impact, for example, right? And so if we go back to these dashboards, we look at the outcomes. Okay. Here, there's different parameters that you can weigh and you can adjust, such as the objective type. Is it how aligned? What is the alignment of this particular outcome? Does it align to clinical development, disease state awareness, duration? How long does it last? Right, the reach, and those the certainty that we talked about, right, which we already showed. Okay, so for example, the certainty level is here, right? Does it correlate, or is it relevant, this particular activity, to that outcome? And so you're weighing all of that, based on benchmarks that you set. And you're seeing the progress over time, right? It's similar to, let's say, a sports athlete, right, who would see where they stand as an individual as well as a function. Right. So in this case, I have, for this particular company, I have a lot of 2024 data. All right. And the FTEs, so the numbers of people that you need in order to replicate those contributions are also considered. Meaning, this is the corporate contribution index that allows our teams to understand how their work, their daily activities, right, translate into those bottom line outcomes that were listed in the previous dashboard. And they're also adjusted by the numbers of FTEs, such that in this case, if you see a field medical team that may not be contributing as much as the other functions, only has 3 FTEs, for example, right, may be adjusted, right, and may require various different decisions to be made. Okay, which this program sends as notifications, decision analysis notifications, and which may allow you to increase the number of the field medical liaisons or change their workflows, right, which you see at the top dashboard here. And this dashboard essentially grades the confidence level or the recommendation of various different activities to allow you to spend more time in those that are likely to lead to outcomes, more likely to lead to outcomes than others, right? And so perhaps if the field medical team has a lower corporate contribution index than other functions, you would be able to maybe add some of these top activities and increase the impact point score, for example, in the notifications that are sent. All right, so these are the notifications that I'll show, the KPI decision analysis and strategy, which are really meant for the team lead. You can send them every 3 months, for example, right, to actually make sense of all the data, all the dashboards. Okay, so that's in essence the summary of some of the features that we have. And now, how would you really onboard this, right, in a team? And we're going to get into this. And we talked about the DeepMetrics cycle, that I want to lead our discussion with. I think ultimately what you have is you're able to set your benchmarks. That's what really makes it exciting, where you decide as a team lead, right, in the beginning of the year, right, how to prioritize, what are the tiebreakers, if you will, right, between one activity and another in terms of impact. Make educated guesses based on what you've done before, but make that first step, right? Rank them by activity, right? So set your benchmarks first. That's the first 2 steps. List all the internal and external activities, rank them by impact. And then the next 3 steps is where you gather data, some of which I already highlighted. Gather data from your customers so that you are more accountable to your customers and to your colleagues as well. right? It's both general system surveys as well as specific customer feedback on particular interactions, which the system allows you to do. And then once you do that, then you raise new standards, really, right? You modify, you make decisions, you recognize progress as well, right? And you can choose how you've recognized them before your teams based on your experience. I'm very interested to hear that. And so that's really the cycle. And so the longer that you use the program, the more predictive these assignments, these quantification of the impact will become. And so that's the exciting part about really being a little bit more intentional about how you can meet your goals this year. Okay. Now, I'll highlight one best practice from outside of our industry, based on a leadership forum that I attended in New York, from John McNeil, who was a global president of sales and marketing at Tesla previously. And he talked about how he was inspired by one of his best friends, who was an NFL coach in football, who got his team together to watch tapes of their games, videotapes. And what they found is that when they did their best to look at the mistakes they made in detail and prevented the mistakes in the next games, that's what really made the difference. And that's what predicted the success. So he calls his impact analysis, if you will, innovation by subtraction, and he has 3 ingredients that he highlighted, which are expanding your view, right? Your line of sight of the customers of the journey. Second is injecting urgency and accountability, which sports athletes know very well. And then thirdly, testing yourself, starting with your own benchmarks. And he calls it eat your own dog food. Okay, so with those thoughts in mind, I want to get into our case studies for the next 15 minutes or so before we open it up to questions for the last 10 minutes. Okay, there are 3 scenarios that I want all the speakers to think about. First is a mature team with a new product launch. Second is a pre-launch team with only one function, field medical affairs. And a third is an integration or merger or acquisition. Okay, so here's our first one. Okay, and you can picture the team here with all the major functions of a typical medical affairs team present. And I want to ask, what are some of your key factors in driving a medical affairs to perform at their best, based on your experience in such a scenario? And which features of the ANCORA would be relevant, if at all? Jeff, why don't we start with you? Maybe you can get the discussion going.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Tim. I think, seeing your demonstration, what I like about ANCORA is that it's completely customizable, right? So you can do whatever you want to with it. And I saw, there's some overlap of functionality in the tool with maybe CRM or some other tools, but I think that's just there for flexibility, depending on, the company and what the needs are. So what I like is, you don't need duplication of things that you're measuring, but it's completely customizable to capture the things that we're not currently capturing. And that's where the need is for me. We attempt to collect certain information from different disparate groups within medical affairs, but we don't have a uniform, efficient way of doing it. And that's what ANCORA provides. So for me, it would be, those things in the scenario, a product launch, those critical milestones that we try to collect, on a spreadsheet or an email or, those kinds of things. This gives us a uniform way to collect that information. And like you said, the transparency for all of the team members to see.
Okay. Yeah. And anyone else want to add to some of your lessons from draw on your best practices as well? And I'm sure you've been in these scenarios where the medical affairs team comes into the organization and sets the stage really for with all the instrumental relationships in place, raises awareness of the product as well as the disease, and collaborates with other functions as well. What are the key lessons?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in here. I think, one of the things that I see this platform be able to do is, so we're measuring, people's, outcomes and their performance. But sometimes, right, they may be performing what we're asking them to do, but perhaps the activity or the tactic or maybe even the strategy, right? But before we even get to the strategy, we got to make sure that maybe it's the activity and the tactic. They're just wrong, right? Or maybe not, they need to be refined. And I think that by being able to capture this information holistically, using this platform, particularly like in a launch, right? You don't really have, you can't necessarily spend a lot of time, right, pursuing either a tactic or activity that is not doing what it was intended to do. And I feel like this platform may give us the information to be able to pivot at a much earlier time frame versus waiting, right, too long and then having to pivot and not be able to make up the valuable time lost.
Yeah, I agree there with Liz. What gets measured can get managed, and so having this in a central system, similar to CRM, but we've spoken about this before. Sort of, CRM is great for sort of external activities, but these internal activities are key for these biotech companies and pharma companies as they roll out products. Even when you think about what is partnership with top KOL in the field, is that internal, is that external, is that a partnership? How do you log that? Are we reaching out to the KOL from different teams? Are we maximizing the relationship as well? And so all of this is sort of ingrained in that, or could be ingrained in the solution, which I think is very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we talked about before, Alex, where sometimes the medical team also calls and meets with the same thought leaders as sales, as commercial, right? I think was one of the scenarios that I've definitely seen, but yet they don't know, they don't always synchronize their efforts, and this can maybe help make that more important, significant. Yeah, sorry, Luz, I think you wanted to speak.
I just want to mention that if I am the team leader of this product launch in the medical affairs and I have the chance to see frequently this dashboard, like on time every single day, I can actually have a very big picture approach to a lot of things, and also a lot of detail that I could actually either take out or increase in number. So I think it's just very helpful to be able to customize everything. And right now in other CRMs, if you ask for a customization, it's like a whole new project, so it's going to take a long time. And here it's just something very simple and very automatically driven. So that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. So here are some of the lessons as well from our peer discussion that we've had, as we brainstormed about this scenario as well, right? And you mentioned these, how critical it is in a launch to meet those milestones and timelines, right? And also bridge the gaps, between, let's say, the remote team in the field as well as in the health, in headquarters. One thing we also talked about before was the performance reviews as well, right? How do you really shift from performance reviews to personal records, like that brag book that you have, or that record of your that's more quality as well, that's continuous. That's probably going to be very important in a launch. Now I want to shift gears towards a more early stage type of team, which is in oncology, exciting mechanism, but only has the field medical affairs team that educates and disseminates and generates evidence with thought leaders. But it's a make it or break it type of a situation where they want to help clinical development meet their goals and enroll patients. What are some of your lessons for leaders in this scenario of how to drive a team like this to perform better, to know the purpose, and to set new records? And how would you maybe change the approach from the other one? Any differences? So, Luz, yeah, I see you're coming off mute.
Yes, this is a very different scenario, and having in mind this scenario, I think key performance indicators are very crucial to take decisions onward. Even inclusively, if you see that the key performance indicators and their impact on the field, it's not enough. You might want to have like decisions like, I don't need all these 4 people or 5 people out in the field. I need other people to do other different stuff like medical information, or it varies so much, or a person who manages all the different data like ATOR data, or it's just very different. So the approach here must be in a very like decision making, I think, analysis. This is very very common in countries where I used to work. Well, the resources were very limited, and you have to like actually decide if it's good to have all these MSLs out in the field or not. So KPIs here, and having a robust place where to put it and to actually integrate everything and to actually show it and highlight it to the senior leadership is very important. It's crucial in that process, and that's in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else want to add?
I mean, my addition really just piggybacks on Luz. This is a time, right, where resources are probably a little tighter, right? Because we want to, put that money into the actual clinical development. So you have to be really judicious and specific of where do you spend your money? Where do you allocate for resources? What type of resources? So I think that, a platform like this really helps in that decision making. So I completely agree with Luz on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here you have a small team in field medical affairs, right? And going back to the example I provided earlier, where you have a lower contributions, relatively speaking, from field medical affairs. If you look at the corporate contribution index here, right? Yet you could look at this dashboard, which is broken down by the objectives or strategic imperatives or goals of your company, right? And you could really focus on clinical development support and show that, well, even though the team overall has not contributed as much with the 3 that we have, or 6 in this case, right, that I showed, still the field medical team actually is providing some contributions to clinical development, right? So it gives you a more of an evidence-based type of a approach to building a stronger business case for resource allocations that you're measuring continuously. So in our discussion, in our previous discussion and a focus group that we have among us, these were some of the topics that we talked about, right? This is a way to capture our wins, right, Jeff? I think we talked about that in a very limited type of resources kind of a environment, right? And one thing is for sure, it's you always kind of you think, okay, so when resources are limited, maybe when you have a lot of transparency on performance, is this going to drive more competition? Is this going to, is this platform going to, kind of discourage some functions that may be misrepresented, or individuals that may be in challenging areas to not perform as well? So let's be intriguing and kind of address that. What do you think?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about sharing data across the teams, and maybe some of the teams feel underrepresented or misrepresented. But I think that's when that comes up, that's something that you can discuss and modify. Maybe an outcome does need to be changed, or a metric needs to be changed. But I'm a fan of transparency. I think everybody being able to see the performance that we're trying to achieve is helpful overall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If anything, this may give an opportunity for people to recognize how their work is currently, or actually may, right? This may be the opportunity where they say, well, wait a minute, I could actually help with that activity or with that tactic. And it may actually inspire more collaboration. So hopefully, right, it's all about really how this is rolled out and the tone that leadership gives and how they're going to be using this information. But I do believe, right, if you want people to participate and to have buy-in into this, they need to have transparency to it and allow them to also take accountability in some ways that they see fits, right? Like, again, they may say, well, no one has, and again, it's not pointing a finger at anybody, saying, I see you're working on this. We weren't really brought into the discussion, but we think that we may be able to contribute, right? And it was probably something that, unless you had it somewhere that someone could see it, they wouldn't even known, right, that the initiative was taking place. So I think this could lead to more collaboration and hopefully not necessarily competition, because not every function, right, is going to be contributing to all activities. So the fact that you'll have differences, I think it's going to be normal.
Mm-hmm. And really, the main goal of this, as someone who has optimized CRMs before and tried to get adoption and transparency on teams before, the main goal for this, the transparency, is to actually drive even those that may be misrepresented, or they may be working at headquarters and they may not have interface with the customers, for them to strive to do better, to show progress over time, right? And to make that visible to others. I mean,
yeah, I think one real advantage that this tool has is the ability to weight metrics differently. So everything's not equal, and I think that helps when you're looking at disparate teams.
Yeah, great, thanks. And I would kind of venture to argue that if you don't have any metrics, or if you have the wrong types of metrics, which often is the case today, or that may actually lead to more competition than if you were to be transparent. But this competition is implicit, where people are not clear about the purpose, right? Or they're not confident that the way their impact is measured is actually relevant. So you can also look at it from the other angle as well. Okay. Let's see. So there's a third scenario, and that one is, I think, very, very realistic today, as many companies are merging, being acquired, right? And you have to make that integration go smoothly, but it's a very delicate, very sensitive time usually, right? So, what has your experience been through these types of scenarios, and what are some of your key lessons or applications from this feature, from this ANCORA platform? How do you drive that purpose and performance as well through a time of uncertainty, when everyone is looking they're not sure whether or not they're going to stay on, right? Or, what really is meaningful to this new company that's now coming in?
Yeah, Tim, I was just thinking that the times that I've been through a situation like this, it's the team that's able to demonstrate value that gets to stick around, because there's a lot of duplication in a merger or an acquisition, and you want to keep the people that are contributing to the success. And so, a platform or a tool like this would arm you with that data. So,
yeah.
I second Jeff's comment. If I would want to be in a company who has this kind of data and has a way to visibly show how the impact of my people is doing, versus another company who doesn't have probably the nitty-gritty of the data, I'm probably absolutely 100% sure that if I'm able to show that with KPIs and all this, I am a little bit ahead of the others for sure. So I would definitely be cheering for those who have it, and those who don't, it's going to be a rough time to demonstrate impact.
Sure. So as we consider this scenario, I think there are also important precedents, and that's published, that those companies that have robust SOPs are the ones that are also likely to be acquired. This is something that we also talked about, where you have a company that was intentional, that was seeking to be acquired, right? And they're looking for partners, resources, for example. If they don't have a very systematic way of a central platform of their SOPs, their operations, or their performance, they may not be as successful in that integration as well, right? So, and one point I would add is that you can help in make the new company, the bigger company, let's say, that forms, to be more accurate in how they forecast their resources for the next year as well, if you have a platform like this. All right, so in summary, we talked about this new approach, ANCORA, that's now available, that's designed in a way that breaks down performance to such level of detail that it ensures continuous improvement, right, by transforming both the customer and the employee experience. And I think we've heard from our speakers that it's possible to actually bring to light and to clarify why we need to capture performance. We have new options. You can be more innovative now, January in 2025, and also ultimately to stimulate each function, each individual on the teams to raise to improve their performance as well. Okay, so set new records. So we have monthly webinars coming up. We're going to talk about some of these features in more detail every month. So stay tuned for the announcement and get in touch with me. And now I'll open to any questions that we have from anyone in joining. One question that I had, as I spoke to some of our colleagues who have registered, was you really need a team to do better, right? And so how do you motivate and stimulate not only the individuals but the teams to do better, right? But the team is composed of individuals, right? So what's really what are some of the kind of your advice and your tips to getting the teams as one unit to raise the bar, how they perform?
Well, I think this is, any kind of change management, there has to be a benefit for the individuals, right? And there has to be buy-in into the vision. You've got to give a vision. This is where we're going. This is what we're trying to achieve. And then they have to see some kind of benefit for themselves in working toward it. So,
yeah, I agree with Jeff. They need to see the value proposition for themselves. And I think that sometimes, you know, as leaders, right, we may accidentally, I don't think it's ever intentionally, forget, right, that the value proposition for those that actually have to do the documenting, right, that have to do the work is equally, if not more so important than even what the leader's trying to get out of it, right? So I think that articulating that first and foremost and getting that buy-in, like Jeff said, I think is absolutely critical. And I think we outlined some ways, right? Jeff, you were the one when we were previously discussing, right? This could be a fantastic way for them to start kind of collecting their performance reviews, what they've done, and better articulate. So now it's not just a laundry list. It helps them create the list, but it's not just a laundry list of things that they've done. They can actually talk about it and how it impacted, right, the strategy for medical. So it has more meaning towards it.
Okay. Any final comments from Alex, Luz?
Now, I would piggyback on what's been said about. Oh, yeah, the collaboration and, you know, sort of creating the why in the operations and actions that need to be done, and how it impacts them in the future. And I think it's a win-win for the organization to see sort of the actions that are happening, and it's a win-win for the individual as well who's making the contributions.
Okay, great. So thanks. Luke?
No, I just wanted to say that if you connect the purpose of every single person with the actual impact, it'll just go smoothly.
Yeah, great. And it starts on an individual basis, probably, right? So I think all of you have mentioned that it's you have to get each one of your team players to know who they're accountable to, and what team they belong to, and how they're contributing. Their individual contributions actually lead up to the team's success as well. So so I hope we addressed that question that was asked from one advisor whom I talked to about this webinar here. If you have questions, we didn't get any questions here. I had quite a lot of attendees. I'll send you the slides. Okay, those of you who registered, and stay tuned for the next webinar. Thank you so much to all the guests.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.